Hi, I'm Ashley, and I'm with the Valley Film Festival. I'm here with Jon Massey, the creator of web series Frank James. And Frank James is a detective series. Its logline is "His darkest days lie ahead." Jon, tell us a little bit about yourself and your series.
Hi, I'm Jon Massey. I'm the writer-director of Frank James. And this is a crime drama. It's about a detective who is on the hunt to bring down this crime boss who is responsible for the death of a young kid. And there's a lot more to that right now I only have the first two episodes filmed, and the series sort of came about from a pilot script that I wrote, and I've broken down the pilot into sort of snippets and for a web series. And I knew that I could film the first two episodes just financially and being able to gather enough people together to do it. And the challenges, of course, is that in a web series, you really have to try and pack a lot into it in a short amount of time, especially in the short form format. And so there was some rewrites and bringing some stuff in and taking some stuff out. And so once the sort of the ball got rolling as far as getting these first two episodes done, now it's the process of getting the next 6 to 8 episodes finished to have a complete series. And as we all know, for as filmmakers, the challenges, of course, is is sort of the finances and getting it out there. So there's been a lot of sort of this type of format coming out that's the Quibi, and there's a lot of other web formats that are markets that are available for this. But so that's sort of the right now we're hitting the film festivals and the web festivals with these two episodes, trying to get a little bit of exposure for it. And then, of course, we had hoped to be in production on the rest of the series this summer, but of course, we all know about this pandemic that hits. So so now we're trying to sort of gather the troops and get it back up and running, maybe later this fall or early winter. But we'll see where everything goes. Everybody's sort of getting back to work with it, and so that's sort of where we're at.
Great. Well, I really think you did an incredible job of getting everything together. Every piece came together really well. The acting, the directing, the writing, the producing, the editing, the music, everything was a really nice, like, you look at independent films and something always goes wrong. You know what I mean? Or there's one piece that isn't quite right. And as filmmakers, we're really critical of our work. But I really loved this piece, and I thought it was kind of reminded me of that Amazon series Bosch. My husband and I have binge watched, so I could definitely see this being on Amazon, or being something that people binge watch. Tell us a little bit about how your script developed, like why you chose this genre, and how your writing process went, and your casting and pre-production process.
Yeah, so it is interesting because it is a story that lends itself to the episodic content, but on a longer format, 1 hour. And so some of the challenges with the web series, again, like I said, was getting some of that into that quick 7-minute to 10-minute format. And so, I've had this idea for this show for a long time. And when people talk about, I've been working on this for 10 years, it's like, well, I first wrote this pretty soon after the Rodney King unrest, in 92. And that was sort of the idea. It became a short story, and then it became a feature film, and then it became a pilot. And what's interesting is we've it almost feels like it's become full circle. Part of this, the grittiness and this crime drama, was it's taking place during this moment of civil unrest, and we haven't gotten to that part in the web series, but in the first episode you will start to see some of that happening, and that's sort of the background So there's sort of these grander themes that are happening that, you know, are maybe just snippets in the first 2 episodes, but I'm hoping to, you know, was hoping to get all that out in the first season. So the writing, you know, it's a web series is very challenging. You know, I think, you know, people kind of throw stuff together and, you know, it's great. And, you know, the comedy format really works really well with it. But a dramatic series, you know, when you're really trying to hone in on it, you know, a short film, to me, almost feels easier because you know you have to have this sort of completion to it. And the interesting thing about you know, when you're writing a scene is every scene is like its own little short film. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know, needs to be some sort of resolve to that moment, and you're leaving it a little bit open-ended to lead to the next scene, or to the, you know, to keep pushing your characters. So in that regards, it was, you know, okay, well, I know I could. This is sort of where a good place to break for the next episode. But binge watching, you know, it's become this the thing of like, okay, I'm going to watch this series and watch all 10 episodes. So you're watching really a 10-hour film. Whereas before, when you would watch it, you had to really have that sort of like, okay, well, I've got a whole nother week before I watch. So the sort of episodic serial, you know, where it's one linear storyline. You're not doing a procedural where you wrap up the case by the end of the first episode. You know, The Wire was a great, you know, it was a big inspiration for me to make this into a web series or into a series from a feature. And you know, so then once my lead actor, Chris Muto, I've known for a while. He was my wife's trainer, and you know, I helped him on one of his films, and I was sort of having him. I wanted him and his wife to come in and do like a scene study. You know, sort of as a director, you don't really get to practice your craft with actors in the full production, you know, all the time like you would with writing. So I wanted to do a scene study on this script, and you know, he kind of said, hey, how about, you know, let's go ahead and shoot this. You know, I was going to maybe film it as just a scene, but it was like, let's make it into a web series. So that kind of started the ball rolling. And so Chris, you know, plays the lead character, Frank James. His wife, Angie Patterson, plays his wife or ex-wife.
Wow.
And, you know, we did a casting session for the rest of the characters, and our co-producer, Che Landon, did a fantastic job of getting some amazing talent together. And you know, we went SAG, did the permits. You know, I recommend that to anybody. It's some hoops to jump through, but I think the talent you get is just fantastic. So.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me as a SAG-AFTRA and SAG-AFTRA board member up here.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about shooting. And you were shooting in Los Angeles, right? And
yes.
How was it shooting? And it looked like you were shooting in some pretty gritty locations. Were you shooting in gritty locations?
Yeah. Well, we filmed in an alleyway, you know, near my work that I knew that I could get access to, but we had to pull the permits for it. You know, what's interesting is the house that Frank and his wife live in. I always envisioned being a little bit, you know, grittier a little bit, but we had to use my house for the location. So if you notice the photo behind me, this is the location that we filmed in, and so, you know, it was sort of finding the right locations. What's also amazing now is that you can get your vehicles through Turo.com. You can get your locations through Gigster.com. So there's a lot of resources that you can acquire to try and like piece your film together that I think, you know, really hasn't been there before. And you know, we filmed over 4 or 5 weekends, and some of these weekends were only one day because I needed a day. I was working at the time, so I needed a day to prep and then a day to shoot. So a lot of it was, prepping one day, shooting the next day, or some of them were 2 days in a row. But and I've worked in the film and TV industry for a while. I'm a visual effects supervisor by trade, so I was able to kind of pull from some of those resources. Very fortunate that way. But you still have to really, on the visual, since I'm on the visual side, I don't know a lot of sound engineers other than people that I've worked with that, said, hey, who do you know that, it's coming up that like to do this? And the interesting thing is I worked on shot a short film years ago, and the sound mixer that did my short film, I reconnected with through this search, and he said, "Yeah, I'll come and do your show." So he's a professional sound mixer. So I think that's also something that everybody just tend to forget or last on their list. But I know for me that was a priority, was is getting the sound quality. And so very fortunate to be able to use some of the resources, and the colorist, Jill Bogdanovich was the colorist for The Joker, and she's done a lot of big shows. So we really lucked out on that. And so that's, you're just sort of being scrappy and just, getting it together. So, but it went well.
Cool. Great. Well, what was your favorite part of production? What was your favorite part?
Well, I love the moments that I can take off my writer's hat, take off my producer's hat, and just direct. Because when you're doing sort of all encompassing, when you're worried about like, oh, what is lunch on its way? Is everybody going to get fed? Those sort of things tend to distract you. And, you want to be able to have those moments on set with your actors, especially if you haven't had a chance to rehearse with them, to try things out. You want to be able to sort of be able to have time to make an adjustment. And so those times when, working with the actors and say, okay, I can have a few minutes here, let's talk about this. Let's do a read through. Those are those moments when everything else around you just kind of fade away, and then you can just work on the material. That's the most enjoyable for me. I think the second most enjoyable is then hearing your words, from an actor. If you've written the piece, hearing someone say it and then seeing it come to life as well. But that's a recommendation I also give to a lot of, people that, screenwriters, is like, if you think a line is not working or something, get some actors together, get them to read it. Don't somebody reading it who's not an actor is going to read it in their head and say, oh, this works, this doesn't work. But an actor will show you what they're stumbling on or what's not making sense, and having them, especially being able to work with somebody else, it's a scene with two people. That's really important, because a lot of times you get on set and you're like, oh yeah, that line in my head worked great, but seeing it on camera, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work. So.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly valuable for sure. What was your post-production process like?
Well, post-production, but you always want to try and bring in your team before you're in production. Set up all that. These are your deliverables. This is what we need, and I'm a little bit of like, pull the trigger, let's go, kind of a person. Which can bite you on the ass a little bit. But I think I knew enough. It was like, okay, I can make this work. I did not have my post sound team before I started shooting, or while I was shooting, but I knew by having a professional sound mixer that he was giving me all the material. So when they got it, it was like, oh, this is what we're used to getting. I also had some ideas for editors, but I hadn't locked somebody in with it as well. And that was, but since I did find her in the middle, I think, and she did offer some suggestions about some ideas, like, well, if this is the piece I think you're missing, if you can shoot that, it was like, oh, okay, because when you're in production, a lot of times it's like, especially I work on television shows, you'll get through the first 2 episodes, the editors start working, And then they say, hey, we're missing this great angle you really need, or we're missing this shot. And the producers will say, okay, let's come back, or since everybody's still working, let's shoot it. And then you can fill in those gaps. And that, I think, is really important by having an editor involved. When you're doing a feature or a short, you kind of shoot it all and you're like, oh, okay, do I got to do reshoots, or, that sort of thing. So post is, since I work in post, I think it was probably the easiest, but I was calling in a lot of favors, so you're at the mercy of somebody else's time. So it took a long time to get the edit together, because it was like trying to squeeze it in here and there. As a visual effects, we don't really work with sound. So again, finding my post sound team, I was just searching on the internet and making those phone calls. And but I think they did a fabulous job. I learned a lot in that, just in, there's an instance when a muscle car drives up and we hear that, and they're playing with the sounds, and I'm like, is that a lion that you're putting in there? And they said, oh yeah, we do that all the time. So I was like, oh, your engine has a lion roar in it. And it's like, yeah, that's standard sound procedure.
Wow, that's impressive. Well, but this project has been with you said since 1992, well, that's where the idea, it basically was after that. That's what was the impetus a little bit. And, probably it started, my first draft was finished probably not till like around 96. Yeah.
And, went through a lot of rewrites and a lot of stages. And there are some bigger themes that will come out. What was interesting about promoting this is, you're kind of only promoting the first 2 episodes. I'm kind of only showing you just a little snippet. In the next episodes, we get to meet the DeChicos, the crime family, their son, and then we start to get into it becomes a connection between them. So it's a little bit, that's where we get into sort of the Heat, where the Michael Mann's Heat film, and where, we're kind of playing both sides, and you're starting to see both sides of it. So it's but the difficulty in promoting something where it's, you don't have the rest of it shot, I thought about shooting just snippets of it, but then I didn't need it to go through casting and get all of my other characters, and it just became a bigger deal. I really wanted to just hit the ground running, and let's get these 2 done. Let's try and use that to raise finances and get some interest, and maybe get the rest of the series made.
Great. And how did it feel to finally get those first 2 episodes completed?
Fantastic. Of course, there's always that nervousness, like, is anybody going to get it? The pacing, I think, I'm a little bit of old fashioned when it comes to pacing and camera work. And I really feel like, I love just shows that don't mind just, what? I'm just going to set the camera here, and I'm going to let the action take place. I'm going to let the characters breathe and have those pauses, have those moments. And, and the difficulty, I think, is that you see things that you kind of, once it's completed, oh, I could have made that adjustment, or I could have made that, which the beauty of having a series is that if I get into production, then I can make some of those adjustments later down the line with the characters or the dialogue or anything else. So that's a bonus of the episodic content, is that you get to kind of adjust. If any television show, you watch the first few episodes and you start thinking like, well, the character, I don't know. And then they start hitting their groove, and it's like, okay, now they're getting going. And that's kind of the fun of the serial episodic, is that you just you get to really dive into the story. Your main goal is to get it to the audience, that's and get your next project, but you really just want to put it out there like you're a writer, and here's my book. Here you go. So
what is your next project? What's next for you?
Well, besides, other than this, which is, all encompassing, I do have a couple of ideas for short films that I want to do that are, a little bit more self-contained. And so that's the next goal, is to, have a couple irons in the fire a little bit. I have I also write a lot, so I have other screenplays I'm trying to push. I have a feature, I have a couple of features, and getting those off the ground have always been like, okay, what's the path? What's how to, you can get some interest in it, other than the normal putting it on Blacklist or Coverfly, or it's like, hey, how about just making it? Let's see if you can raise the money. And some of that financing can be really scary, because you don't want to get into debt financing where you're in up paying for it with your credit cards. But at the same time, you want to, if you can't garner that interest, it's kind of like you get sort of stuck in the water with it a little bit. And so there's but my main focus right now is just, once we get through some of this, production's getting back into it, is to start, figuring out the COVID routine, if you want to get back into production, and how a small web series could fit into that, and, what the costs are with that. So that's sort of that's the main focus.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks so much. I know I've taken up a little bit more of your time than expected, but was there anything else you wanted to share with us about Frank James?
No, other than if you see it on the website, or you go to our website, it'll show you the festivals that it's playing in. Support those festivals. They're all Valley Film Festival. You guys have been great. Amazing. I live in the Valley, so it's great to we're so close and yet so far. Hopefully we can get back to a screening. And there's a lot of great web festivals that are online and virtual, and that sort of showing the support for that, I think, is really important. And so hopefully we'll see you online.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Jon. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Ashley.
Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.